Hello and welcome to Dragon Boat Dynasty, a podcast where I share my experience in building, coaching, and scaling a Dragon Boat team. My name is Sean, and I'm the head coach of Argo Naga Dragon Boat team with over 100 active members based in Malaysia. Today's episode is quite a deep one, and in order to tell the story, I will need to go back to the early days, back in 2017. During our first race in the DBS Marina Regatta, this was right after we came off of our first ever Penang race. So this is year 2. We are essentially 1.5 years old. We sent a small contingent to the DBS Marina Regatta in Singapore, and we were not confident in our ability at the time. Of course, so new, right? Just a year and a half old. And much less to actually compete with the Singaporean teams. Singaporean teams are actually very strong. Right off the bat, their minimum level of strength is actually very high. We were very afraid that we would get knocked out in the early stages. So we had a running joke at the time, which was to be in the same frame as others, which means that if there was a cameraman shooting that heat that we were paddling, the cameraman, the camera range, we would be in the same frame as the leaders of the pack. So the cameraman does not have to keep panning back and forth to find us way behind. So which means that we're not too far back. During that time, we didn't have much internal role models. So it was during the time when we were pushing the boundaries ourselves. We didn't know how far we could go. We didn't know how far any team would go, much less a team that is so young. And we had the tendency to screw up our first heats, the first ever races that we always go to. I think we can attribute it to race jitters, everyone being too uptight and too afraid of everything, and there were no seniors to guide us. We were the seniors. We were, the only ones. We would usually be so afraid of not being warmed up enough that we would tire ourselves too much by warming up too much and doing so many race simulations, set after set after set, just to make sure we get everything right. And by the time we go down for the race, we were so beat. During the opening heat of the Open 22, we messed up very bad. I think, in row 2 or row 3, I don't remember, around there. The set was so bad, I felt like I was paddling all by myself. The sink was bad, the launch was bad, everything was just weak. Everybody's fighting on each other. I think a lot of people were missing their strategies. They couldn't get it right. They didn't know what was going on. So by the time we completed the set, we docked the boat at the pontoon. We got out and immediately know how bad it was. Everybody we were just stooping. We didn't talk to each other. We didn't kind of recap the set. Our coach and steerer at the time immediately stormed off. He just walked off, and he didn't want to talk to us at all. I guess he needed to cool off, instead of at that point of time, if he would have approached us, he would have lost his shit, and things would have been so bad. So it was a good call to just let us cool off. He himself cool off, and right before the rapid charge, he would come back and he would give us a pep talk. So just a little bit of an idea of how a traditional Dragon Boat race works. You have the preliminary heats, where the winners will advance. Winners in the sense that sometimes the top 2 of the heat, or the fastest winners, it depends on what race, and the rules will vary. So essentially, selected winners will immediately advance to semifinals, and losers, everyone else, will go into repechage for a second chance to get into the finals. So within the repechage heat, the pack, usually the winners of every heat in repechage, along with the fastest losers, will go into semifinals. So we didn't win anything. We naturally just go into repechage and fight our way back into semifinals again, hopefully. We were thinking at a point, the least we could do was just complete 2 heats. The preliminary heat and the repechage, and we'll be done. We'll pack up and, we'll call it a weekend. Probably go walk around Singapore or something, right? Right before the repechage, our coach came back and he gave us a pep talk. So at that point, we decided, right, we had nothing to lose. It was the last try. We could just give our best, and we were all fired up, and we were ready to just go all out, no regrets. And during this race, we had to print a special batch of jerseys with our national flag on it. There was a time when we learned that in order to compete in an international race outside of your home country, your jersey needs to have your home country's flag. And at that point, we realized that we were not only representing Argonaga, but we were also representing Malaysia. I think if memory serves me, the only other Malaysian team there at that time was Penang Forward. No other Malaysian team was there, so it's just the two of us. When we did the repechage, we started off incredibly strong. It was us in lane 2, then Safra in lane 3, and Kia Splash in lane 4. I remember this because we had a video of it on Instagram, and sometimes I would just watch it to relive the excitement. We started very strong. We competed with them neck to neck, and at that point, we regarded Safra and Kia Splash as well as one of the stronger competitors. And by the end of that race, we edged out Safra and came out in front. I think it was about half a dragon's nose ahead of Safra. It was just about like 2 inches, 1 or 2 inches. And it was amazing. It was, at that point, I think even till today, I would say that it's one of the greatest wins in our history books. Of course, we don't know where we are now compared to these two teams. I mean, we know where we are compared to Kia Splash, but it could be because Kia Splash lost its competitive edge in the past few years, and we may have improved a little bit. So, there's this gap grew because of that. But we haven't had a chance to compete against Safra in a very long time. We haven't had a chance to compete in Singapore for a very long time, so we don't know where we are. But at that point, it felt like one of the greatest wins in the history books. And that was half a year before, I think it was half a year. No, it was a couple of months before our Langkawi race, which was, in my books, the greatest win ever. Still. I'll get to that, I guess, one of these days. And so we made it to semi-finals. So instead of being able to pedal twice, we get to pedal 3 times, which is as much as we ever could, because being able to reach finals is an impossibility. But in any case, getting to semi-finals is good enough for us. And during semi-finals, we actually didn't care how we performed. We just let loose and we had a good time and we just did our best. And we ended up being in the top 12 or 13 overall, or 14, I don't remember, but it was somewhere around the range of that. Overall position in the whole race among 90 teams. For a team that's a year and a half old, I guess that's pretty good, right? Archilochus, an ancient philosopher, once said, "We don't rise to the level of our expectations, we fall to the level of our training." Which means that when we compete, when we go for races, the best performance that we can do is at the level of our training. We can't get any higher than our training, and we cannot rise to the level of our expectation, which means that our expectation is usually higher than what we can give. But we usually can't reach there. But we found a way for the team to perform beyond our expectation during races. It came as an accident. I think the first ever time we found out was actually during our first DBS Marina Regatta race. And it was with adversities. In a few times, we performed really well. Our surrounding environment provided us with adversities throughout our entire past. And so we all sat down, right? A few of us just sat down and tried to dissect the situation and ask ourselves, what happened? How do adversities cause us to perform better and to give more than we ever could in a normal circumstance? And most importantly, how do we recreate this emotional charge that can rally the team together and give their magical level of performance? So the coach and the captain at the time tried a very controversial method, which I did not totally agree, and I still don't agree till today. But I do understand why he did it. And if you were to ask me at that time, if it was me making the decision, if I would have made the same decision, I think I would. Because at the very least, I needed to test to see whether it would work, whether we can control it, and what side effects would it bring out. So he went on to create adversities. So the first few times he used this tactic, it worked. It worked very well. We get all powered up, we get all charged up, and we give really good performance. But the problem with this tactic is we can't keep using the same angle all the time. Imagine if you listen to the same "I have a dream" speech. You listen to it enough times, even though the first few times it really riled you up, really charged you up. After a few rounds, you get bored, right? Then you need something else, something new to rile you up. So that was what started to happen. We had to come up with new ways to rile our paddlers up towards a cause. And eventually, after a while, we got more extreme because we ran out of ideas, right? We got more extreme. So we started pitting our paddlers against each other in order to spark the fire. What was scary was that it worked for the first few times. It worked for the first few batch of our members. But eventually, it completely backfired. So, things didn't help when we came back from Langkawi a few months later and we got second place in Open 22. We beat out Penang Forward, which at that point we regarded as a giant, and we nearly, very, very nearly edged out PIPC, which until today is still a giant in our books. And we got ambitious. Things just got over our head, right? We wanted to not paddle with the giants. We want to be one of the teams that the giants will look at us and get, I guess, scared, cold feet, or they would not see us as little kids anymore. They would see us as formidable opponents. We wanted to be that. And while the captain was busy creating adversities, I proposed to start up the New Elite Project. The New Elite Project is a project where we would pick a selected group of people and train them differently than others in order to prepare them to fight against the giants. So the Elite Project is a very complex story on its own, and it merits its own episode, which I will get to one of these days. But long story short, it further amplified the divide that is already festering within the team at that point. At the end of this stage, the team was in shambles. We were too ambitious. We wanted things fast, and we were pitting our paddlers against each other. And the Elite Project was not being run properly. It was the first time we were doing it. We had no idea what we were doing. And the best way to try something that you don't know is just try it and see what happens, right? So we had to make a major reset. And we had to save what little of the team we have left. So many paddlers were burned out at that point. We completely lost our competitive edge during races. We were barely surviving rapid charge again. And we had to rebuild ourselves. Morale was low. It was just bad. Every single set was just bad. It was crazy. We had members who were leaving the team. We had members who threatened to quit en masse and wanted to start their own team. And, they can give us all kinds of reasons for leaving the team, like, work and all that kind of stuff. But we knew what was the real reason why they wanted to leave the team. They had enough of it. So fast forward to 2023. Late last year in 2023 when we were preparing for Penang. It's 2024 now as of the time when I'm recording this. We were faced with multiple adversities. We had injuries, we had multiple injuries, we had last-minute pullouts, we had people who were not paying full attention, we had people who were paying too much attention, and all kinds of stuff. So for most parts, The coaches were keeping all these things internally. They were trying to control it without having it spill over to the general members. So they had no idea the kind of things that we were firefighting for a good 2 to 3 months before the Penang race. Most of the boats didn't have any reserves at this point. We were running on fumes. If 1 or 2 people would have dropped out of like COVID or something, then the whole boat would just collapse. But we decided, we already committed, and we just push our way through and then leave the rest to faith. So at one point, we wanted to remove 2 non-performing paddlers from boat A. We wanted to move them to boat B. At this point, we keep telling our paddlers that the lineup is always still on a testing phase. Nothing is confirmed. So we will keep testing to see if any areas that don't fit, then we will move them around. But some paddlers assume that as long as they're paddling in boat A, they are set in boat A, which is not true. So herein lies the problem, right? They think that their seat was secure, and when they were asked to move to boat B, the first thing they did was pull out for a race entirely. So what happened was because we had no reserves, it left boat A with a massive handicap. We had 2 paddlers short from boat A. If we would have made the decision, an objective decision, what we would have done was move the 2 best paddlers from boat B to boat A. This will increase the chance of boat A going as far as possible, hopefully into the finals, and boat B will be a sacrificial lamb. And ideally, if there were enough reserves and enough paddlers, this would be a sensible move. But boat B has been struggling with major morale issues for the past few months, 2 to 3 months at least. Half the paddlers don't turn up for time trials and trainings. And in fact, the first time they ever had a complete lineup was during race day, which was, 2 months too late. Safe to say that we didn't start the race weekend in the right mind frame. But I have to commend the paddlers of boat A, because when I told them of this news, that they didn't have enough paddlers, they did not complain, they did not ask why, they did not ask anything. In fact, what they did was, the first thing they did was they just gathered together and they started brainstorming ways to solve the problem, to objectively fix the problem, test out stuff. We had 2 weeks, and they used the entire 2 weeks to just do all the tests that they could do. And I was very glad that they took it that way. And I guess after all those times when sometimes you feel as if they lost their focus for the team and they started becoming a little bit more individualistic, it's times like these that bring them together towards a greater goal. Adversities, right? It's adversities. It brings people together, really. It's pretty amazing stuff. During the mixed relay category, so relay is where we split the 22 crew half into 2. One batch will paddle to one end and will capture the flag. And once the flag is captured, the other batch will come back and then they will finish the race. Boat A lost control on the way back and veered off to another lane, to a point where they had to stop and they had to restart. So at that point, they lost a lot of distance that they gained. I remember that time, the Argo B squad, the boat B squad and I were watching the entire thing from the end of the race lane. And we felt so much power and tenacity from boat A during the restart. It was amazing. I haven't felt this kind of execution in a very, very long time. And even after losing so much distance to the competitors, they ended up nearly winning that heat. That was how powerful the set was. And it was during that time when both B paddlers turned to each other and they said, let's do this for the team. I spent so many months trying to rally the team together to no avail. Sometimes they would just, pretend to be sold by what I have to say and say, okay, we'll do this. But it, they're not sold on it. They don't care. They can't be bothered. They've already given up. But one adversity banded them together to want to do their best for the team. At that point, I knew it was no longer about them. They were no longer fighting each other. They were finally getting together and understanding what they need to do to defend the team's honor. And throughout the weekend, all the boats performed incredibly well because they saw this need to fight for the honor of the team, and they completely discarded their individual interests for the interest of the team. So, all in all, we learned how to push our paddlers beyond their limits to give us their best performance, and we learned how to activate it at will. But it came at a great cost. Many years ago, after we nearly lost our team, we decided that no matter how tempting, the Pandora's box should never be reopened again. But this season, we were again tempted by the box and all its possibilities. My first reaction was, no, I'm not going to do this. But after giving it a little bit of thought, I asked myself, maybe this time I'm a bit more matured. Maybe this time I can learn to handle it better. Maybe this time I can learn to harness its powers at no expense, at no cost. Maybe this time our paddlers are mature enough to understand and to handle the fallout of the effects of the Pandora's box. Maybe then we learn how to use this ability. But maybe it will completely destroy the team once and for all. So I decided that all the ambition I have for the team and myself should not come at the expense of its people. Not anymore. So while I'm still here as a coach, lock and key. I'm not going to open this thing anymore. Unless someone comes over, takes over, and they decide that it's worth the risk, then it's up to them to do it. But not in my hands. Alright, that's all for this episode's Dragon Boat Dynasty. You can catch all the episodes of this podcast on YouTube, Spotify. And if you've made it this far into my podcast, 6 episodes, you're probably one of the very few who find the content interesting. It would really, really help if you could just tell one person, a friend, about this, and hopefully they will be, I guess, at the very least, entertained on their drive to work and back, and maybe gain some values, right? Alright, that's all. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.